Have you betrayed the game of football? Have you betrayed the game of football, sir?
You have a nice haircut.
Why won't you resign?
Thank you so much.
Why won't you resign?
Thank you so much.
Fans, FIFA associations want you to step down. Why won't you?
Sorry.
Have you betrayed the trust of FIFA, sir?
I see you at the hairdresser. Sorry.
One awkward exchange just put FIFA president Gianni Infantino back under the spotlight. When a bald reporter directly asked why he refuses to resign, Infantino fired back with the strange remark, "I'll see you at the hairdressers."
FIFA president Gianni Infantino has avoided questions from Sky News reporter James Matthews, choosing to mock him instead.
The response quickly became another talking point around his leadership. Infantino is already facing serious pressure from critics, calling for him to leave his position at soccer's world governing body. The backlash comes after a failed attempt to launch the FIFA Forward enterprise, known as FFE.
In which he interviewed himself, a corporate thing, but no Q&A and no explanation to the fans, to the wider public, about where he is taking the game. That's why he is in the predicament he is in, not just with FIFA associations wanting him to step down, but also fans who say, look, this is a man who can't be trusted, who has made a mockery of the game and therefore shouldn't be allowed to lead it into the future.
The controversial proposal aimed to sell stakes connected to future World Cup tournaments to private investors, raising major questions about FIFA's direction and how its biggest competition could be handled commercially.
Who were, for you, Simon, the biggest winners of this tournament? Other than Spain.
Piers, I'm going to climb off the fence and I'm going to go back to who's the biggest prick argument, and I'm going to give it to Infantino. He hands out peace awards. I'm going to hand out prick awards. Here's prick of the competition for you, Infantino, because your job is to uphold the value of this bloody tournament.
The controversy does not stop with FIFA's business plans. People are also questioning the decision to suspend a red card ban that US MNT striker Folarin Balogun was expected to serve during the 2026 World Cup. Meanwhile, Infantino appears to be losing support from some major forces inside world soccer.
Do you want to apologise? Do you want to say something to them about this?
Yes. Well, thanks for that. Yes. First of all, I use the word Brit. You know, that no Brit was arrested at the World Cup.
So you offended the whole...
So I offended, the Scots, the Welsh and the Northern Irish, so I need to first apologise I apologise.
UEFA, the AFC and CONCACAF have all publicly opposed him, and together they reportedly have enough voting power to potentially remove him through a vote of no confidence. There has also been speculation that the former UEFA executive is being given a chance to leave the position on his own terms instead of facing a forced exit. But so far, Infantino has shown little sign of publicly accepting that his leadership is in serious trouble.
Have you betrayed the game of football? Have you betrayed the game of football, sir?
You have a nice haircut.
Why won't you resign?
Thank you so much.
Why won't you resign?
Thank you so much.
Fans, FIFA associations want you to step down. Why won't you?
Sorry.
Have you betrayed the trust of FIFA,
I see you
sir?
at the hairdresser. Sorry.
Something serious is unfolding behind the closed doors of world football, and the pressure surrounding FIFA is getting harder to ignore. This is no longer just another argument between officials or a disagreement that disappears after a few meetings. At the center of the growing power struggle is FIFA president Gianni Infantino, a man who has spent roughly a decade at the top of the sport and is now facing one of the toughest challenges to his authority. Powerful figures across international football are openly questioning where FIFA goes from here. Three major confederations have raised concerns about Infantino's leadership, while a growing number of national associations have reportedly pulled back their support. From the outside, that might make his position look increasingly fragile. But behind the headlines, there is a major complication that could completely reshape this battle.
Football Association of Wales, the FAW, were the first association to publicly withdraw their support for Gianni Infantino. Now, interesting, speaking with the chief executive of the FAW, it was a unilateral decision. They hadn't talked with any other association. Yes, there'd been this wider UEFA meeting before then around that failed enterprise put forward by Gianni Infantino. But in terms of withdrawing support, it was a unilateral decision. And interesting to say, if no one else had followed after it, the FAW told me, then so be it.
The people pushing for change may have plenty of noise behind them, but that does not automatically mean they have enough votes to remove him. That difference matters because FIFA's future is not decided by whoever creates the biggest public reaction. Ultimately, the numbers inside the voting room carry the real weight. One powerful voice in African football made that position clear this week, saying, "Only elections can decide his future, only the ballot box." Those words cut straight to the heart of the situation. Public pressure can grow, alliances can shift, and influential officials can challenge the president. But when election day arrives, every side still needs the votes. So how did FIFA reach a point where its leadership has become the focus of such an intense political fight? And why could a vote still months away decide whether Infantino remains one of the most powerful men in global sport? To understand how deep this situation runs, we have to go back to the moment Infantino first took control. He was elected FIFA president in February 2016, stepping into an organization still dealing with the fallout from the corruption scandal that brought down his predecessor, Sepp Blatter. FIFA's reputation had taken a serious hit. Trust was badly damaged, and the organization was under enormous pressure to prove that a different era was beginning. Infantino entered that environment promising change, but years later, the fight surrounding his own leadership has opened a completely new chapter. For years, Gianni Infantino appeared to have one of the safest seats in world football. He was re-elected without opposition in 2019, then did it again in 2023. With no rival standing in his way, his grip on FIFA looked rock solid. During that time, he expanded the World Cup, helped drive FIFA's revenues higher, and built strong relationships with football officials and associations across the world. Whatever criticism followed him, the numbers that mattered inside FIFA continued to work in his favor.
The focus now is on cooperation. It's what's in the interest of global football.
Then came the 76th FIFA Congress in Vancouver, where Infantino confirmed what many inside football already expected. His intention was to stand for election again in 2027, pursuing what would be his fourth period in office. And, under FIFA's current interpretation of its rules, his final term, a victory would potentially keep him at the top of world football until 2031, extending an era that began all the way back in 2016. But this is where the rulebook becomes extremely important. FIFA's statutes limit a president to 3 4-year terms, meaning a maximum of 12 years. At first glance, the math seems simple enough, and it might appear that Infantino would be blocked from another run. The key detail, however, is how FIFA treats those first years of his presidency. Infantino originally took office in 2016 after Sepp Blatter's presidency ended early. Rather than beginning what FIFA considered a completely new 4-year term, Infantino was completing the remaining part of that existing presidential cycle. He successfully maintained that those roughly 3.5 years should not count toward the formal 12-year limit. Under that interpretation, the clock on Infantino's 3 full terms started in 2019, not 2016. That means 2019 to 2023 counts as his first full term, 2023 to 2027 as his second, and a victory in 2027 could give him another 4 years, taking him through 2031. On paper, the path looked carefully mapped out. The rules appeared to leave the door open, his international support network remained powerful, and there was no obvious challenger capable of breaking his grip. Then, a proposal known as FIFA Forward Enterprise entered the picture. And suddenly, the political ground beneath Infantino started looking far less stable. The proposal that pushed this dispute into the open was enormous, even by FIFA's standards. Known as FIFA Forward Enterprise, the plan reportedly involves selling as much as 20% of the commercial rights connected to FIFA competitions, including its biggest prize, the World Cup, to private investors. The goal was to raise approximately $4.2 billion, potentially bringing a massive injection of outside money into FIFA's commercial operation. But the money was only one part of the story. The bigger controversy centered on how the proposal had reportedly been developed. FIFA's member associations had not been fully consulted before details of the plan began circulating publicly. For an organization built around hundreds of national football associations, that became a major issue. Once information about the proposal reached the media, what had been happening behind closed doors suddenly became a very public fight over power, transparency, and who actually gets a say in FIFA's biggest decisions. UEFA, European football's governing body, quickly emerged as one of the strongest critics. But Europe was not standing alone. The Asian Football Confederation and CONCACAF, representing North and Central America and the Caribbean, also joined the challenge. Three major confederations were now pushing back against the FIFA president at the same time, turning what might have remained an internal disagreement into a serious leadership dispute. Then came a joint letter containing an extraordinary accusation. The three confederations accused Infantino of breaking trust, writing, "Through deception, when an individual places himself above the collective that entrusted him with authority." That language showed just how far relations had deteriorated. This was no longer simply a technical disagreement about commercial rights. His critics were questioning the way authority itself was being exercised. They called for a review of Infantino's leadership, and according to multiple reports, some wanted him to step aside before he could seek another term. UEFA reportedly went even further, raising the possibility of boycotting FIFA competitions if Infantino remained in control. Whether such a drastic move could actually have happened was another question, but even discussing it showed how serious the confrontation had become. Faced with mounting resistance, Infantino changed course. He withdrew the proposal and apologized for the way the process had been handled. The $4.2 billion plan was off the table, but withdrawing it could not erase the wider political fallout. The proposal had exposed divisions that were previously easier to keep behind closed doors, and now those divisions were sitting right in the middle of the battle over who controls FIFA. What started as a dispute over one controversial proposal was now turning into something much bigger. The trust between Infantino and some of FIFA's members appeared badly damaged, and the fallout soon moved beyond statements from powerful confederations. National football associations began distancing themselves from his re-election campaign, creating the impression that opposition to his leadership was spreading across the map. England, Wales, Norway, Sweden, Serbia, the Netherlands, Finland, Ireland, and New Zealand were among those withdrawing their support, with concerns reportedly focusing on governance, transparency, and whether member associations were being properly consulted before major decisions were made. Each withdrawal added another crack to the image of Infantino as an untouchable FIFA president. But there was a catch, and it was a huge one. FIFA elections are not decided by which countries have the biggest leagues, the richest clubs, or the loudest voices in the media. They are decided by votes. FIFA has 211 member associations, and each eligible association can carry enormous importance when the ballots are counted. That voting structure is exactly why Infantino could still be in a much stronger position than the growing backlash might suggest. The Confederation of African Football has backed Infantino unanimously, giving him a potentially crucial base of support. South America's CONMEBOL has also lined up behind him. The Oceania Football Confederation declared its support as well, even though New Zealand broke ranks. Individual countries including Qatar, Egypt, Morocco, and Sudan have also expressed backing for the FIFA president. Infantino has even received public support from United States President Donald Trump, who called replacing him a terrible error. That endorsement does not translate directly into a FIFA ballot, but it adds another high-profile voice to an already heated international power struggle. And this is where the numbers become messy. On one side are major forces within Europe, Asia, and North America pushing for change or raising serious concerns. On the other are powerful blocs across Africa, South America, and Oceania that could provide Infantino with the votes needed to survive. Confederation-level criticism also does not automatically guarantee that every national association inside that confederation will vote the same way. So the battle is not simply Europe against the rest, or supporters against critics. Alliances can split, national associations can make their own calculations, and public declarations do not always reveal what happens when voting begins. The football world now looks deeply divided, with one commentator describing the situation as a civil war in world football. The real fight, however, is increasingly becoming a numbers game behind the scenes. The real showdown will not happen under stadium lights or in front of thousands of chanting supporters. It will happen through a ballot, where alliances, promises, and months of political maneuvering could eventually come down to a simple question: who actually has enough votes to control FIFA? That is exactly the point CAF President Patrice Motsepe pushed this week. Motsepe, who also serves as a FIFA vice president, argued that anyone who wants Infantino removed should challenge him through FIFA's formal election process, rather than trying to force the outcome beforehand. He said, "If anybody's got any problem against anybody, whether it's Gianni, whether it's anybody else, follow the process. Follow the FIFA process. Simple as that." Motsepe did not stop there. His message to Infantino's opponents was even clearer. If you want to take him out, go for elections. Let the 211 member associations decide. Do that, and the vote will express whether they've got confidence in him or not. In other words, all the public criticism and political pressure surrounding Infantino means little if his opponents cannot turn that frustration into actual ballots. Motsepe also questioned why some people appeared ready to make a final judgment so early, especially with the election still some distance away. That argument highlights the strange reality of this FIFA power struggle. Infantino can face serious criticism from major football organizations and still remain politically difficult to remove because FIFA's leadership is ultimately determined through its election system. The rules of that system now become crucial. The presidential vote is scheduled for the 18th of March 2027 during the 77th FIFA Congress in Rabat, Morocco. Before anyone can even enter the race, however, they must clear the first hurdle. Candidates have until the 18th of November 2026 to submit their applications, and any challenger must secure at least 5 letters of support from FIFA member associations. Then comes the secret ballot, where public promises can become much harder to read. If only 2 candidates contest the presidency, a simple majority decides the winner. If 3 or more candidates enter the race, the process becomes more complicated. A candidate would need the required majority under FIFA's election rules to secure victory. Otherwise, the lowest ranked candidate can be eliminated and voting continues into another round. That is where this fight could get seriously unpredictable. Public statements can show where associations claim to stand today, but a secret ballot creates room for shifting alliances, late deals, and surprise decisions. For Infantino's opponents, making noise is one thing. Building a coalition capable of beating him when 211 associations get their say is a completely different game. That leaves one question hanging over the entire fight for FIFA. If Infantino really can be challenged, who has enough influence, connections, and support to actually beat him? For most of the past decade, that question barely seemed worth asking. Infantino won without opposition in 2019 and 2023. Now, with criticism growing and alliances being tested, potential rivals are suddenly being discussed much more seriously. One of the biggest names in the conversation is Nasser Al-Khelaifi, president of Paris Saint-Germain and chairman of Bain Media Group. He also sits on UEFA's executive committee and the FIFA Council, putting him right inside some of football's most influential circles. That combination of club power, media influence, and football politics has made him widely discussed as a possible contender. But there is one major problem for anyone already treating him like a candidate. He has not officially entered the race. Victor Montagliani is another heavyweight name being mentioned. The Canadian is president of CONCACAF and a FIFA vice president, giving him years of experience inside football's political system. Then there is Sheikh Salman bin Ibrahim Al Khalifa, president of the Asian Football Confederation. He has publicly criticized Infantino's plans before and already knows what a FIFA presidential battle looks like, having challenged Infantino in the 2016 election. Alexander Ceferin, the UEFA president, has also appeared in speculation surrounding the race. His future adds another layer of intrigue because he has said he does not intend to seek re-election as UEFA president in 2027. Whether that leads to a FIFA challenge is another matter entirely, and speculation should not be confused with an official campaign. That is what makes the situation so unpredictable. Despite all the criticism surrounding Infantino and all the recognizable names being discussed, there is still no confirmed challenger in the race at this stage. The filing deadline remains months away, meaning potential candidates still have time to count votes, test alliances, and decide whether taking on Infantino is worth the political risk. some betting markets have reportedly placed Al-Khalifi among the leading possibilities should he decide to run, but betting odds do not decide FIFA elections. The harder reality for Infantino's opponents is that they would be challenging someone who has spent years building relationships across world football. Infantino's political style has relied heavily on travel and direct contact with national associations. During his first presidential campaign, he disclosed that UEFA provided him with a budget of €500,000 to help fund flights around the world while he sought support. That globetrotting approach did not disappear after he became president. Infantino has continued traveling, meeting football leaders, strengthening relationships, and maintaining connections across FIFA's vast membership. And that could become his biggest advantage. A challenger may have a famous name and powerful allies, but defeating an incumbent with relationships spread across 211 associations requires something much bigger than headlines. It requires turning influence into votes. Then there is another part of FIFA politics that cannot be ignored: money. Through the FIFA Forward program, member associations can receive millions of dollars in development funding across a 4-year cycle. For some of football's smaller nations, particularly across Africa, Oceania, and other developing regions, those funds can make an enormous difference. The money can help improve facilities, support youth programs, strengthen women's football, train coaches, and keep local competitions running. That financial relationship has also become part of the political debate surrounding Infantino. Critics argue that when national associations receive major development funding during a president's time in office, it can naturally strengthen that president's standing with those members. But that does not prove the funding is being exchanged for political loyalty, and FIFA has denied any direct connection between development payments and votes. Still, the political calculation is impossible to completely separate from the wider battle. One former Premier League chief executive argued that Infantino's support outside the confederations challenging him could be strong enough to survive the pressure, saying, "Infantino has enough backing from the other confederations to ride out any attempt to overthrow him," while describing the crisis as a storm in a teacup. But that description raises an even bigger question. Is this really a temporary political storm, or are the divisions now deep enough to threaten the structure of world football itself? Many of the organizations pushing back against Infantino sit at the commercial center of the sport. Their competitions, national teams, broadcasters, sponsors, and massive fan bases contribute heavily to football's global economy. If their leaders ever moved beyond angry letters and seriously pursued threats to distance themselves from FIFA competitions, the financial and sporting consequences could be enormous. Whether they would actually take such a drastic step remains uncertain, but the possibility alone gives their opposition serious weight. Then there is the language being used against Infantino. His critics said, "Trust is broken," and argued that it happened not through a policy disagreement, but through deception. In FIFA, the word deception carries particular weight because the organization has spent years trying to move beyond the corruption scandals that defined the final period of Sepp Blatter's presidency. And yet, the election math still refuses to give Infantino's opponents an easy path. Infantino has declared his intention to stand and retains backing from major blocs within world football. His opponents may point to 143 members across Europe, Asia, and North and Central America on paper, but those associations do not necessarily operate as one single voting machine. Countries can break with their confederation's broader political position, and some influential associations have already signaled support for Infantino. Others could make their decisions much closer to election day. That is especially important because the presidential election is conducted by secret ballot. Behind that curtain, public declarations and private choices do not necessarily have to match. Associations can weigh sporting relationships, development priorities, political alliances, and their own interests before casting a vote. That makes the apparent 143-member opposition look powerful on paper, but far less predictable once individual ballots enter the equation. After all the accusations, shifting alliances, political pressure, and public warnings, Patrice Motsepi's central argument brings this entire battle back to one place: the election. Letters can increase the pressure. Confederations can challenge the president. football officials can publicly withdraw their support. But none of those moves alone can decide who sits at the top of FIFA. Ultimately, the 211 member associations hold that power. On the 18th of March 2027, FIFA's members are set to gather in Rabat, Morocco, with the future direction of world football hanging over the Congress. When the presidential vote begins, the ballot will be secret. That means all the public statements we hear before Election Day may tell only part of the story. Behind the voting curtain, each association will make its own decision about whether Gianni Infantino should remain in charge through 2031 or whether FIFA should enter a completely different era under new leadership. But even an Infantino victory would not make every problem disappear overnight. Winning an election answers the question of who has enough votes. It does not automatically answer the much harder question of whether damaged relationships can be repaired. Can Infantino rebuild trust with the football organizations that have openly challenged his leadership? Can FIFA bring together confederations that currently appear to have very different ideas about how the organization should be governed? And can those disagreements be settled without creating an even deeper split between some of football's biggest commercial markets and associations that depend heavily on FIFA for development and investment? That is where this story becomes bigger than one president. If these divisions continue growing, FIFA could face a serious test of its ability to operate as one global governing body, while representing countries with completely different financial realities, political interests, and football priorities. The organization was built around the idea that every member has a voice, but this crisis is testing just how strong that system remains when powerful blocs start pulling in different directions. Before any of that can be settled, there is another major date to watch. The 18th of November, 2026 is the deadline for potential challengers to enter the race. Until then, every meeting, endorsement, withdrawal of support, and possible candidacy could shift the numbers again. Then comes the campaign, the negotiations, the final alliances, and eventually the secret vote in Rabat. And that is what makes the coming months so interesting. Infantino may look vulnerable in public while remaining powerful where it matters most. His opponents may appear strong when their numbers are added together, but those numbers only matter if they hold when the ballots are cast. A famous challenger is not enough. Angry statements are not enough. Whoever wants FIFA's top job needs to build a coalition capable of winning the actual election. So now we wait to see who steps forward, who stays loyal, who switches sides, and what happens when 211 associations finally get their chance to decide. The next chapter of FIFA will not ultimately be written by speculation or threats. It will be written by votes. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more stories from behind the scenes of world football, like the video, share it with another football fan, and subscribe to Matchio so you don't miss what comes next. Drop your take in the comments too. Does Infantino survive the challenge, or are we watching the beginning of the end of his FIFA presidency? The countdown is already moving. The alliances are being tested, and the biggest decisions are still ahead. Thanks for watching. Matchio, peace.